This video is a continuation from part 1 of my 10 cards from One Kit for Simon Says Stamp Card Kit of the Month for May 2019. So for my next card, I wanted to do another watercolor, and I blended together a couple of greens and decided to paint each leaf a full layer of green, and I tried to keep it pretty moist so that I could go back in there and try and create that little effect where it transitions from dark to light. So if I leave it alone, I think it'll pool a little bit more into the other leaves. Like that, the first three didn't quite work, but the other ones are starting to work. But yeah, it's starting to work. Yeah, they just needed to be a little bit more wet. So you try this. Don't be afraid of water is the thing I learned. It's called watercolor paper. And I didn't bother taping it down to the table because I knew I wasn't going to saturate it. Now this group of leaves, I'm using a darker color. And now I'm not afraid to really color it in. And then I'm going to move on to the petals, and they never got as saturated with color as I wanted them to, but I do feel like I'm learning that blending thing a little bit better. It's fun when you videotape it, you see your progress. So those paints right there on the left are pearlesque, and because it didn't get as saturated in color as I was hoping, I went over it with some of that pearl-esque watercolor paint. And then I decided to fussy cut the thing. There's something about fussy cutting. It's just fun. And then I took the cardstock that came in the kit and I cut it in half and I made a base. And I blended some oxide inks on there. And darn if I didn't get close to the right color of that cardstock that came with the kit. And I mounted all of those pieces together. I don't know what it is about green and pink, but I love them together. And then here I'm just going to add one little sparkle to the front of the card on the tag. And we're done. Love that one. Okay, for my next card, I decided to use the triangle and the circle, which is the symbol for AA. It's not their logo, it's just their symbol, but it's kind of a universal image for people in sobriety, and that's who I make my cards for. So I decided to make a couple of cards focusing on that, and I made my little shapes, symbols, whatever, out of the pattern paper that came in the kit, and those punches that I have, which make it so easy and fast to do, so much better than cutting triangles and circles with cutting dice. Now I'm just playing around with the pattern paper that came in the kit and trying to match up what I think is going to work along with the symbols, not in musical symbols, as in the other kind of symbols. So I like that polka dot, and I'm trying to find a sentiment that will fit on the space of those triangles. And I was thinking of putting 3 different ones, but I ended up only using one sentiment. So then I added the polka dot paper to the side of the card and the pattern paper I wanted it to go to the edge of the card, which left a little bit of a gutter. So for the little symbols, I decided it would pop if I gave them a border. I didn't want to bother matting them with another layer, and it was quick enough to do it with just a little marker like this. It could be any marker, but I think I found a really good color match with my Copics. So happy for you. So here's where I go in, and I just happened to open the cap to the chisel end by accident, and I said, I'll use that side, and it worked out pretty good. And then I'm popping the sentiments up with some foam tape and also the rose. And then a few little heart sticker embellishments from my stash, which I don't know what I'm going to do when I run out of those, because I don't know where to get them at. But that's it for that card. Ooh, that one's one of my favorites. All right, for this card, I used mostly the pattern paper and some of my own trim. I just looked around for pieces that I thought would work well together, and I love that big floral butterfly paper. So I found the green that matched nice with it, and then the little cloth borders I've had in my stash for a long time. They came in really cute on this one. And then the sentiment I already had cut from another project I had done, and I didn't use it in that one. And I wanted to make it look like the same die cut that I had used for the tag, so I fussy cut around the edges. And you see, I didn't do a perfect job, so I had to cover that up. So I found a little bow in my stash, and I put it up with foam tape, give it a little bit of dimension. And again, my favorite little embellishments, my sparkly hearts and stars and flowers. And then I just mount that onto my card base with just my tape runner. And now I just need to place the little sentiment on there, and I can't decide which one's my favorite. I just love this one. Okay, so for this card, it's one of the simplest ones I did, and it's actually one of my favorites. I wanted to use some of the pattern paper, and again, I went to my ribbon. I love that gold ribbon that I have there. I got that at the Dollar Tree. And then I wanted to use the stamp, and I stamped it on some of that pattern paper, so it had the same exact color behind it that's in the color palette. And I used brown ink from Hampton Arts. Brown ink would look a little bit better than black ink, I think. I took those to my Big Shot, and I cut all three of them out using 3 different little tags that I have, so I could cut all 3 at one time. So there's my tags. So now it's basically a matter of adhering the panels to the card base. Beautiful color palette there. So I'm fishtailing both ends of that little piece of ribbon, and I'm thinking I'm going to stick them both out from either end of the round one, but then I changed my mind and I decided to stick them off either side of the rectangle one. And I could have done it with just one piece of ribbon without cutting it in half, but I didn't know that I was going to cut it in half. I mounted that with a couple of foam squares, tucked in my ribbons, added it to a card base that I used from my stash. Now I'm just looking for an embellishment of some sort, and I have these little flowers that I love. Super happy with that card. Now for number 8. So I like this pattern paper, and I decided to cut that in a couple of strips, and I'm going to use that down the right and left side of my card. And then I'm looking for a different pattern paper that will contrast and complement. And they're both tiny patterns, so it actually works. But I break it up with a little bit of ribbon. I grab my long scissors to trim off the edge. It's much easier with long scissors when you have to cut off extra pieces of paper that hang over the edge like that. And now I'm just laying down enough adhesive so that I can put my ribbon on there. And I want to peek it out just a hair behind the panel. So I've realized it's better if I actually adhere it to the panel rather than to the card. So I'm using my mat as a measuring tool. Bring it up just a hair, and that looks great. Now I can center that on my card base. I like it. I'm telling you, it's the easiest ones, the simplest ones that end up looking the best. Keep it simple, stupid. And then I use the sentiment that I cut out earlier, and I grabbed the ribbon, the red ribbon, and I was going to try and thread it through that hole, and I decided against that. Too tiny. And I don't have a, what's that called, an eyelet maker thing? I'm just trimming off the tails of these 2 little pieces of ribbon and gluing them to the sentiment. You want to say it, don't you? I sent him in to get it for you, but he never came back. So I mounted this one up with a couple of foam squares, and I used the foam squares to adhere the ribbon to the sentiment a little bit better. And then I found this little metal butterfly. It's actually a charm, and I adhered it instead of a flower to the sentiment tag with a glue dot, and it's a strong glue dot. I had a hard time pushing it off the letter B in the word beautiful. I'm telling you, the simplest cards are always the best. I love this one, but I wanted to add a little bit more of my favorite little sparkly hearts. And I wanted to put them in little clusters. I have a hard time with this. I think the girl that does this the best is Little Crafty Pill. Her name is Amanda. I don't know how to say her last name. She's got a knack for this, where to place her little embellishments that finish off a card. She just does it beautifully. I struggle. I shouldn't, but I do. It's just not, I don't know what it is. But anyway, I finally settle on 3 little clusters of 3, one below and above the sentiment on the right and one a little bit to the top left, but all of it inside the panel. Okay, guys, these are cards number 9 and 10, and I didn't videotape them, but I will talk to you about them. So this card I made using this watercolor background paper I had in my stash. This paper, silver foil, this purple foil paper I had in my stash. And then the leaves and the flowers here are made with the alcohol inks that came in the kit. And I stamped the flower pattern onto tracing paper. You see right there? And then I put alcohol inks over it and I let it dry, and then I cut those out, and I put one down and then I put another one, and I felt like it kept needing more layers, so that's how that ended up like that. And then I have a cutting die with those leaves, so I cut that out and I put those there, and then I grabbed these flowers out of my stash as well, and then I didn't like it, so I didn't finish the rest of it. But this is my mother's favorite card out of all of them, so I don't like it. Anyway, that's that one. And then this one, I watercolored it behind there, and then I got on this tracing paper kit. So I stamped the flowers on there, and then I watercolored it. And then I cut a piece of tracing paper and mounted that with some purple brads that I have in my stash. And then I raised that up just a little bit with some foam tape, but I don't like it now because you can't see anything. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo this one and then stamp it on top of that, and that'll look, somehow make it like see-through, like a window thing. I'll work on that. So that'll be kind of a cool technique if I can get back to that one. Anyway, that's 9 and 10. Thanks for your patience on those two, and I've got a really cool project coming up next. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and that you learned something or were inspired. And I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. I have some really cool projects coming up. Bye-bye.